everybody! Now we're going to be talking about a subject that I like very much, which is indie video games. I do really enjoy them because I don't have the patience to be playing some overblown, over-budget AAA game that has like 60-hour campaign and tons of side quests to do. I like playing games that are short, that tell a concise story and are putting their best effort at being really good at one thing instead of trying to be sort of good in a big variety of stuff that I don't give a shit. So if you've been in the internet for a while, you have probably heard of the concept of indie Earthbound inspired RPG. And I am here today to discuss what this term actually means, because if there is something that we know about gamers and gaming culture is that they pick one term and they overuse it so much that eventually just loses all fucking meaning. But you're probably asking yourself, Laura, who are you to say what is an Earthbound inspired game and what isn't? What makes you more qualified than all of those people online involved in the discussion of gaming worldwide? Well, I actually play the fucking games. I actually went, sat my ass down in the chair and play the fucking things. I don't just go around saying, oh, don't worry, I'm such a huge fan of gaming and Earthbound, even though I never played. So without further ado, let's discuss what is Earthbound and what makes an Earthbound inspired game. I think the easiest way to go through this is actually first saying what isn't on Earthbound. And I'm not saying that there aren't certain traits that indie games have picked on and is shared by all Earthbound inspired games, but the reason they have these traits is not because of Earthbound. They were inspired by something else. Maybe not even games, maybe other media, I don't know. The existence of these traits does not mean that this is an Earthbound inspired game. Actually, it makes it more different from Earthbound. First of all, Earthbound does not have multiple endings and does not ask you to question the morality of the protagonist. Earthbound is pretty straightforward as a game. You play as a kid and you go on an adventure. You're not committing like genocide or shit. You're not doing that. The closest thing that Earthbound has to multiple endings is when Mother 3 you play as Lucas and you get to decide whether or not Lucas does a thing. And the game just straight up says that it doesn't matter what you choose, Lucas will do the thing. So Earthbound, pretty straightforward game about a kid that goes and does stuff, goes on adventure. It doesn't have multiple paths or whatever. Related to that, Earthbound is not a metaphor for depression. I don't know where this comes from, because apparently, indie RPG, Earthbound inspired, metaphor for depression is a very common sentence. I don't think I have ever played an indie RPG that was a metaphor for depression. What I've heard about were platformers that were metaphors for grief, for self-doubt, and a platformer where you literally go inside people's heads. That is probably a metaphor for mental health, but every single indie RPG that I have ever played was pretty literal. That honestly is the worst part of this entire video, because I think it goes to show the level of respect that indie games and maybe gaming in general get, because they just lumped everything together. Just like every single indie game is the same. You don't need to play every single one. You can just play one and it's all done. Seriously guys, indie gaming is so varied, has a lot of themes, a lot of narratives, and I don't understand why you would choose to believe that everything's just one thing. Like, you don't have to play the games, but why would you go out of your way to believe that the world is a less fantastical place that has less variety? I don't understand why would you do that. I think that is the same thing about people that go on about film bros that like watching foreign movies because apparently that's a crime and that makes you and that makes you annoying, you know, caring about art. It's okay, I'm just going to move on because I'm going to just be here for a while. Another thing, believe it or not, in Earthbound you don't actually kill people. Maybe I killed the aliens, I don't really remember, but they make it clear that there's some kind of curse by the aliens that make animals and humans be more aggressive, and you actually calm them down. You don't kill them. If you go and you play an indie RPG about a guy that goes around literally killing people, that's not Earthbound inspired. So with that being said, let's talk about what's actually on Earthbound. I think that the biggest clue that something might have been inspired by Earthbound is when the enemies, they look straight at the player. You know, because there are some RPGs like Final Fantasy that the characters stay at the one in each side of the screen. In Earthbound they look directly at you. That doesn't look like it would be that important. I mean, Earthbound did not create this. I think that it was already a thing in Dragon Quest. But when you have narratives that are very emotionally poignant, it does make it more effective if your enemy is staring directly at you. Like when you're fighting a monstrosity or you're fighting your own brother and they are just staring at you and you're staring at them as the player. It does make it more poignant, and it is a trait that has passed down many of the games that were influenced by Earthbound. Related to that, a trait that is very common on Earthbound and Earthbound-inspired games is that the final boss is not going to be using the conventional combat system. What happens depends on game to game, but usually what happens is that there is one single enemy that you cannot defeat head on. You can't attack them, they are stronger than you, and you have to do something else, like, oh, you need to pray, you need to call for help, you need to convince them to not attack you. Another trait that Earthbound has: colorful aesthetics. Earthbound was inspired by literal peanuts. It's colorful, it looks like it's from the 90s when kids used to roam the streets without being afraid of the gays. And I think that Zero Punctuation explained it the best, that the game looks like it was made by children. Not for children, but made by children. And it does have a lot of quirky humor.
It's a weirdo game. Where other RPGs go left, Earthbound goes up. The battle themes sound like Frasier. Instead of being set in a steampunk fantasy world, it takes place in suburban America. Instead of battling skeletons and beasts, you go up against hippies and abstract art. The only conventional part of Earthbound is the combat, which is actually kind of lame. But you don't play it for the combat, you play it for the story.
Earthbound has fourth wall breaks. Earthbound literally asks the player for their name and addresses them in a very important scene. So if a game is inspired by Earthbound, they might be taking these fourth wall breaks. And another thing that is very common on Earthbound and a lot of other Earthbound inspired games, but also indie games in general, in the RPG, is absolutely fire music. Great music. It's very common. So, with all that aside, I want to discuss two artworks with you that are about games that are inspired by Earthbound, and we're going to discuss if the games being mentioned are actually inspired by Earthbound or fit the mold of an Earthbound-inspired indie RPG. And those artworks were made by specific people, that might be right or might be wrong, but they did get popular on the internet, so there are many people that agree with them. So I think that it's worth discussing. The first one was an artwork that I saw on Twitter, that the tweet literally said that they were Earthbound inspired in the RPG protagonists in Poker Gamer Night. But are they? Are they really? Let's discuss. Okay, first of all, we're going to be talking about Lisa, the Painful specifically, because that is the game that breeds the protagonist. Lisa, the first, was actually more inspired by Yume Nikki, but Lisa, the Painful, was very clearly inspired by Earthbound. It doesn't have a fourth wall break as obvious as calling out the player's name, but it does have some fourth wall breaks in the form of how the tutorials delivered, and it does have very quirky humor. The enemy faces you straight ahead, and it is a game that is very colorful with fire music, even though it doesn't follow the pattern of having, 2D gameplay similar to Earthbound. Instead of being a 3/4 view of the map, it's actually in layers. There is like the upper part, the middle part, and the lower part of the game. Lisa was very clearly created to be a very adult RPG, and I think that this is why it does stray a little bit from the Earthbound formula, but you can clearly see that the building blocks are there, especially because the game designer has stated that they were inspired by Earthbound. However, I think that when we talk about Earthbound-inspired games, I don't think that Lisa the Painful is that close to Earthbound. I think that there were way more diversions than you would expect from your typical Earthbound-inspired game. Like, for example, the absurd amount of party members, the brutality of the story, like the fact that you can use drugs, and the fact that it's very clearly a game for adults. But it is an Earthbound inspired game, and unlike the other examples that aren't, it does feel a little close to Earthbound, just not, Undertale. I cannot think of a single element of off that remotely resembles Earthbound. Probably the fact that the player is an entity inside the game and the game acknowledges that they exist. Everything else is just so completely different from Earthbound. I don't understand why people say that it was an Earthbound inspired indie RPG about depression. It's not any of these things, just an indie RPG. You can't even buy it on Steam, it's free, The creator of Off has gone on record saying that they were inspired by Earthbound and they were more inspired by Final Fantasy, and apparently the combat system is very heavily inspired by that game. I haven't played Final Fantasy, so I can't say, but I can very clearly say that nothing about this game is like Earthbound. Like, the protagonist isn't a kid, literally nothing is like our world. It's such a very unique game. I mean, I have played this in my channel and you can check it out if you want to, but I do highly recommend that you play this game because it's free. All you have to do is just turn on your computer and download the game and enjoy the fucking masterpiece that it is. Off is absolutely amazing, and trying to brush it off as just a indie Earthbound inspired RPG is just so offensive. Absolutely nothing like it is like Earthbound, and hell, it's not like any other game that I have ever played. And I think that trying to brush off as one of these games as some kind of indie blob that you can just look at it and guess everything that's going on with this game is one of the things that got me really angry. One of the reasons I'm making this video. Seriously, Off is very unique not like Earthbound, go play it. Hylics is a very interesting case because out of all the games that weren't inspired by Earthbound, this game is the one that most resembles Earthbound. The creator has gone on record saying that this wasn't inspired by Earthbound, but like, the enemies look directly at you. You have the quirky humor. You can literally look inside trash cans to find items. But if you're looking at this video and seeing the images on the screen, you're probably wondering, Laura, what the fuck is this? What the fuck am I watching? And yeah, that's the thing. Hylics could be a little similar to Earthbound, but its aesthetics are so distinct and such an important part of the game that it just doesn't feel like Earthbound at all. Like, the dialogue is literally randomly generated. That's not Earthbound-like at all. In fact, it's not like other games in general. I can't talk about Hylics 2 because I have only played Hylics 1. But I think that it's safe to say that you wouldn't look at this and think, wow, this looks like Earthbound. This is the only game in this video that I haven't played, and I don't really have to. It's pretty obvious. Oh yeah, it's a postmodern RPG about a guy in the 90s that goes around doing dungeons with their friends. Like, just fucking look at it! This is totally an Earthbound inspired indie game. The enemies don't actually look at you, but the characters do, at least the narrator. So I think that they have this base covered. Well, from what I've heard, this game is apparently like super pretentious, and the postmodern stuff is stuck to it like a cancer, so maybe it should be more like Earthbound, but as far as I can see, it's already very Earthbound inspired. So we talked about this image, and we're going to be talking about the second one, and to be fair to the person that drew this and posted this on Reddit, they don't explicitly say that all of these games are indie RPGs Earthbound inspired, but like, Ness is there. Ness is in the image. It's not an indie RPG. I mean, they're probably there because they figure out that Earthbound has something in common with all of these games, and so they're saying that all of these games have something in common with Earthbound. I don't think that it's a stretch to say that they were mildly inspired by Earthbound. I mean, some games here definitely were, so we're gonna be talking about that. OMORI was definitely inspired by Earthbound. It's honestly kind of embarrassing. I have tried to play OMORI, I didn't finish it because the game literally crashed and erased my save. Honestly, I don't feel like picking it up at all because I googled the story and it's fucking stupid. Like, it's so fucking stupid. I can't believe that people actually like this game. But anyways, I have played OMORI and I have played enough about it to know that this is an Earthbound inspired game. You are a kid and you are with your friends and you're battling stuff. You could even say that the world that OMORI inhabits is like Magicant, for example. Yeah, but it feels like a game that was made by children, has a boss that you can't beat. Yeah, it is very much an Earthbound inspired game. Space Funeral is an interesting kind of game because I don't think that it was inspired by anything. I mean, it was probably inspired by RPGs in general, but I feel like Space Funeral is the equivalent of a tech demo but for narratives. You know, like games that feel like tech demos are those games that are like, oh man, we're gonna have this gameplay that uses new tech and we're just going to show how great it is. And in the case of Space Funeral, I think that what happened is that the guy who made it had a really good idea for a story, and instead of like building an entire game, they just built the narrative twist that they wanted to tell. You can see that by the fact that it's a pretty short game. I think that it's 3 hours for you to beat it. But honestly, I don't think that there's anything like Earthbound in it. And even if there were, the game is so short that I wouldn't be able to say for certain. But I can't really find anything about Earthbound in it. Say that Yume Nikki is an Earthbound inspired RPG is very offensive to me and a lot of people probably, because Yume Nikki is so groundbreaking and so innovative that it was an inspiration to other RPGs, you know? Like, there are probably more indie RPGs that are Yume Nikki inspired than RPGs that are Earthbound inspired, if I'm going to be honest. Yume Nikki is essentially like a game that you walk around a dream. Nothing about it has anything to do with Earthbound, and I'm not going to say any further because I don't think I would be able to adequately summarize this game without taking like 20 minutes. Is Undertale an Earthbound inspired game? Well, you tell me! Did the creator literally make Earthbound ROM hacks before making this video? Did this game have a character that has a very common theory of being literally NES? Oh man, I wonder if Undertale is an indie Earthbound inspired. It is! Undertale is an indie Earthbound inspired RPG. And if you are surprised by that, then you probably don't know anything about Undertale. Honestly, the Flowey fight is straight up a ripoff from Gigas. But Undertale did manage to bring a new twist to Earthbound elements and managed to be pretty successful. So if we have a lot more indie RPGs that were inspired by Earthbound in the future, I think that it's more likely that they were inspired by Undertale because nobody fucking plays Earthbound. I'm the only person that actually had the patience to play the fucking game. Okay, why the fuck is one shot in this image? Does one shot even have combat? I honestly can't remember. It is an indie RPG, alright, but this gameplay is so different from everything else that I don't understand why it's here. Why are they the medic? Why shouldn't they be the engineer because they have, you know, the light bulb and shit? So I guess this is it. This is all the games that, I have played or consider to be relevant enough. I haven't played the pulsating Flash game. I heard that it's good. I don't know if Odyssey has launched. Maybe I'll play it when it launches. But honestly, for now, I think that I have made my point. We as gamers, we should be more respectful of the art form that we like, that we enjoy, and we should stop using these cliches. Because even if you were right, even if every single game that I have talked about was Earthbound inspired, doesn't mean that they are bad or that they are the same. Like OMORI, Undertale, Lisa, they are all completely different experiences. Just because they have that common inspiration doesn't mean that they can't use it in many different ways. Yeah, even if they were right about all of these indie RPGs being Earthbound inspired metaphors for depression, they would still be good and would still be worth playing. So I guess my final message is stop buying AAA crap and start supporting indie developers. And also, why don't you go ahead and watch my gaming channel? I play games that are usually indies and usually are RPGs. Currently playing Disco Elysium, probably won't do any more drinking gameplays out of it because they seriously fucked me up, but it's still a pretty fun time. But I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. I mean, maybe I would have already moved on from Disco Elysium, but I play a lot of games, so why don't you go and check it out? Thank you and have a good night.